All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a really powerful argument. What if the best way to make the world better is to abandon ideology? We're going to break down a source that makes this very case, a case for looking in the mirror before trying to fix everything else there. So, let's get into it. So the author of our source material kicks things off with this, fascinating story from a huge speaking tour he was on. He's in these massive theaters, right, in different countries all over the world, and he starts to notice this pattern. He could talk about pretty much anything, but the moment he mentioned one single word, the entire room, thousands of people, would go dead quiet. And that word, responsibility. And that's the big question, right? I mean, why would this kind of old-fashioned idea, something our parents probably nagged us about, why would it suddenly make a whole room of modern adults just stop and listen so intensely? The source argues that this silence, it's not just silence. It's pointing to something really deep, something that we've maybe lost along the way. Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea, this hunger for responsibility. The argument here is that the reaction he was seeing, that dead silence, it wasn't just people being curious. It's a sign of a deep, profound hunger, a hunger for a kind of meaning that maybe, just maybe, our modern world isn't really serving up. So what's the diagnosis here? Well, according to the source, for the past 50 years or so, the cultural message has been all about rights. Demand your rights, claim what you're owed. And look, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the argument is that it's created a huge imbalance. The stuff that really gets us through the tough times in life, that deep, sustaining meaning, it doesn't come from what we demand. It comes from what we willingly take on, what we're responsible for. And by focusing so much on rates, we've kind of forgotten that, leaving this big, empty space, this void in our lives. Okay, so how did we get this void in the first place? To figure that out, the author wants us to go way back, like over 100 years. He makes the case that this isn't some new problem. It wasn't an accident. It was actually predicted, prophesied even, by some of the sharpest minds of the 19th century. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Yeah, God is dead. We've all heard this one, right? Maybe you've seen it on a t-shirt or something. But the author's take on this is really important. He says that when Nietzsche wrote this, he wasn't, celebrating. He wasn't happy about it. It was a cry of despair, a massive warning sign that the very foundation, the entire value system of the West was collapsing, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing, ready to take its place. And get this, Nietzsche wasn't the only one seeing this. At almost the exact same time, all the way over in Russia, the novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky was wrestling with the same terrifying idea. He predicted that into this spiritual void would rush these rigid, perfect-on-paper utopian ideologies. So you've got these two absolute giants of thought working completely separately, and they basically laid out the blueprint for the catastrophes of the 20th century. It's kind of spooky when you think about it. So according to the source, Nietzsche saw two awful paths opening up for a society that's lost its core beliefs. Path number one, nihilism. That's the road of despair, where nothing matters and life is meaningless. Path number two is almost the opposite, totalitarian ideology. This is the path of absolute, crushing certainty, a rigid, man-made system that claims to have an answer for everything, a substitute for what was lost. And this is where it gets really, really scary, because the author argues these weren't just ideas to be debated in a university classroom. In the 20th century, these ideologies got a chance to be put into practice in the real world, and the results were an absolute catastrophe. Okay, take a look at this. This is a perfect example. It's a Soviet propaganda poster, and it's targeting a group called the kulaks. Now, who were the kulaks? Well, basically, they were the most successful farmers, the ones who were good at their jobs. But the communist ideology couldn't have that. It labeled them class enemies, oppressors. And as the source explains, this gave a green light to anyone who was resentful or jealous to just take their land, take their property, all in the name of building some kind of perfect society. And here's the real-world cost, the human cost of that one ideological decision. By taking the land away from the people who actually knew what they were doing, the source states that 6 million Ukrainians starved to death in the 1930s. 6 million people. Let that sink in. This happened in a place that was known as the breadbasket of Europe. It's just staggering. And the source is very clear. This wasn't some one-off event. It points directly to Nazi Germany as the other huge, catastrophic example from the 20th century. Another rigid ideology that popped up after the death of the old values, this one obsessed with creating a perfect race and destroying anyone who didn't fit that mold. The author's point is that you see the same deadly pattern playing out. Okay, so after looking at those absolute horrors from history, the author brings it all right back to today. The argument is, look, the big, scary names might have changed, but that same kind of dangerous, simplistic thinking, it's still around. It's alive and well in what he calls the modern isms. This is so interesting because it's basically a step-by-step recipe for how to cook up a modern ideology. Step 1, take something incredibly complicated, like society or the economy, and slap a simple label on it. Step 2, find a single bad guy to blame for everything. Step 3, pick one, just one, explanation, like it's all about power or it's all about money, and pretend that explains the whole shebang. And the final, crucial step, anyone who questions your theory, they're not just wrong, they're evil. So what fuels all this? The source points to this very specific psychological toxin. The term for it is resentment. It's not just being angry or resentful. It's something more poisonous. It's a mix of envy, bitterness, and this deep-seated feeling of being a victim, where you blame every single one of your own failures on some unjust system or on the people who are actually doing well. And this is the trap, right here. Ideology gives you a world that's simple. It's black and white. Over here, you have the pure, innocent victims. And over there, you have the totally evil bad guys. There's no in-between. And once you buy into that, well, you get to be the hero in the story. And hating the enemy, it doesn't just feel justified, it feels like the most moral thing you can possibly do. So, if that's the ideological trap, how do you get out of it? Well, this final section of our source material lays out a completely different path. It's a path that tells you to stop looking at these giant, grand theories about the world and instead to look somewhere else, somewhere much, much closer to home. And here it is. This is the heart of the whole argument, and honestly, it's a tough pill to swallow. The proposal is this. Instead of pointing your finger and finding evil out there in the system or some other group of people, you start with the really hard, really humble assumption that maybe, just maybe, you're the enemy. That the first place to look for problems is within yourself. And this is why the author is so skeptical of trying to solve these giant, abstract problems. He uses a funny analogy, comparing it to a Monty Python skit where the instructions to play the flute are just blow in this end and move your fingers. I mean, yeah, that's technically true, but it's completely useless. In the same way, saying you're going to fix the environment or fix capitalism is so vague it's meaningless. The concepts are too big, too low resolution for one person to actually do something about. So if you're not supposed to fix the world, what are you supposed to do? The alternative isn't some grand 5-point plan for saving humanity. Nope. It's small, it's personal, it's concrete. The source basically says start with what's right in front of you, with what you can actually control. Stop trying to fix the world and start by cleaning up your own room, metaphorically and literally. Get your own life in order first. And only then, maybe, you'll be in a position to take on something bigger. And that brings us to the bottom line, the ultimate conclusion of this whole argument. Before you can even start down this path of taking personal responsibility, before you can make any real improvement, there's a prerequisite. You have to do one thing first. You have to abandon ideology. You have to be willing to let go of those easy, simple, satisfying stories that feel so good, but are, at the end of the day, so incredibly dangerous. Which leaves us all with one last massive question to think about. If the advice is to abandon these big belief systems, the things that give us certainty and tell us who the good guys and bad guys are, then what's left? What's supposed to guide us? Now, the source points towards personal responsibility, towards your own conscience. But it's a question we all have to answer for ourselves. If not an ideology, then what?